search committee is over, I'm going to select Steve. So Monday, I come with secretary. Nelson comes on. Yeah, he looks good. It's Monday.
Yeah.
That is a good position to have. You know, we used to have Tony. Do you know Tony Saltzman? Tony was a DA. After he was sergeant, round people up.
All right, welcome back, everyone. I apologize that we are late coming back from lunch, but I can assure everybody we had a good lunch.
Make them feel better.
Okay, Mr. Starnes. So at this time, we will resume the committee meetings that we started in the morning. Mr. Starnes, would you please convene the affiliated organizations and oversight committee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Griffith, would you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mr. Starnes?
Here.
Mr. Woods? Here. Mr. Blossman?
Here.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Damp?
Here.
Ms. Jones? Here. Mr. Mallet? Here. Mr. Yarborough? Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you may know, this is the first publicly convened meeting of the Affiliate Organizations Oversight Committee, a committee you created, and I think it was necessary to create this committee. LSU is a lot of things that we all know. Primary mission is to educate students. It is also a $5.1 billion annual economic development driver in the state of Louisiana. We have important roles in healthcare and in rural development and rural health, and we take those roles very seriously. And we have such a wide range of areas that LSU affects, and sometimes some of the things that LSU doesn't fall neatly into the categories of committees that have been standing committees in the past, and this committee was created kind of to see about some of those things, including, of course, the increasing role that foundations and other affiliates play in our university community. It is an essential one in the modern world. It's something that every university has relationships with, and we enjoy ours. Part of that role, as we know, one of our requirements is to evaluate the president. And we have a new requirement from our accrediting agencies to evaluate ourselves. And this committee was tasked with coming up with maybe some forms or objective measures to kind of do that. Pursuant to that, we have, you'll see in your packets, committee members, templates for the presidential evaluation. And this is something that we started months ago. And I'd like to thank Jason Droddy and other staff members for their assistance. And also we've had some communication amongst ourselves about how to best come up with a form for presidential evaluation. I have obviously no pride and ownership. We started by looking at what other schools did, and we looked to see what their requirements were, and we put together some topics and questions. And does any committee member have a question? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the presidential evaluation form? Moved by Ms. Jones.
Second.
Second by Mr. Blossman. Are there any objections to the motion? Hearing none, it's approved. The other item is the Board of Supervisors self-evaluation form. It is different than the presidential evaluation form. It's something less objective in form. This is, again, was a process that we undertook amongst ourselves. I got great input from fellow supervisors, and I think we included all of those things. Are there any questions about the self-evaluation form? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve it?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Brown. Is there?
Second.
Second by Mr. Blossman. Mr. Shotland?
I'm not on the committee, and
That's okay.
And I ask a question at risk of being put on the committee. So, you know, did y'all discuss making the kind of self-evaluation to some degree? I mean, as I look at the self-evaluation form, it's a lot about do we know the history, do we know details on certain areas? It would seem like similar to the president's evaluation process that we should rank ourselves on how are we doing this board communication, on board communication, how are we doing in terms of engagement, how are we, you know, kind of assessing on a 1 to 5 type scale how we're doing in some of those areas. Was that discussed?
Yes, we talked about it. I guess we could have done it the same way, but we chose this less formal, more conversational format, simply because there isn't a requirement to do it any other way. And I don't mean for either of these forms to be the whole answer. This is the starting point, and I expect them to be improved upon and amended, you know, year to year. If that's something that the supervisors think would be an improvement, I mean, obviously that's something we can do. I think from a starting point, just having this informal discussion area would be a great place to start, by how we can improve what we're supposed to be doing and how we can better look out for LSU. Any other comments, questions? Is there any objection to the approval of the motion? Hearing none, that motion is approved. The next item, and it's also part of this committee's purpose, is diversity at the university. And we have a preliminary report, and I call upon Mr. Derek Rivas to present this item.
Thank you so much, Chairman Williams, Chair-elect Werner, members of the board. Thank you for an opportunity to share with you briefly some data on our diversity. You know, diversity has for the longest time been somewhat of a moral imperative, something that we look at because it's the right thing to do. At this juncture, it has become an economic imperative. If we look at the sustainability of our institution in terms of enrollment, especially in terms of enrollment, the diversity will help drive our ability to get to the 35,000. We can't do it without addressing and paying attention to diversity. Along the way, we need to continue to build the rest of the infrastructure in terms of faculty, staff, administrators, and the like. So with this report, I will highlight briefly some of the findings. You can see that across all institutions, we have 48,646 students, of which roughly 30 to 36% of those students are from underrepresented groups, with the largest group being African Americans. We break that down by gender. 57% are female and 43% are male. When we look at our next slide, next couple of slides, we're going to look at administration, deans, executive staff, faculty, and staff breakdowns. Administration is defined as provosts, vice presidents, chancellors, and vice chancellors at all other institutions besides the flagship. Deans, only those who serve as a full dean. Executive staff will include associate vice presidents, associate vice chancellors, and medical chiefs. Faculty, self-explanatory, and staff will be all others. So if we look at administration, across all institutions, there are 38 administrators, 76% are white, Roughly 24% are from underrepresented groups, African Americans making up the largest of those groups at 11%. However, there's a significant gender imbalance with 26% of those administrators female. The next slide talks about executive staff. Again, these are associate vice presidents, associate vice chancellors, medical chairs, 53 total people. When we look at the ethnic breakdown, roughly 15% come from underrepresented groups. And again, the significant gender imbalance at 26% female. Deans. Across all institutions, there are but 29 deans, and significantly lacking in diversity in those positions, both in gender and in race and ethnicity. As you can see, roughly 7% of those deans are from underrepresented groups. On the faculty side, we're doing a little bit better, but a whole lot of work yet to be done. 73% of our faculty across all institutions are white. Between 20 and 25% are underrepresented minorities. We say between 20 and 25 because we have some folks who did not indicate. The work to be done is taken on by this institution here at the flagship, and we're working with our other campuses to also address this, and I'd be glad to comment on that at a later point. In terms of gender diversity, we have 45% female and 55% male. On the staff side, we see increases in diversity along the race and ethnicity lines, with nearly half, roughly 40 to 45%, coming from underrepresented groups, and a breakdown of 58% female and 42% male. As we increase diversity, one of the challenges that we have had recently as an institution, and this is not unique to LSU, anytime you work to increase diversity, the challenges come about the quality of the product, regardless of what it is, in this case, our students. But if you look at the chart on the left, you'll see that in 2015, the average ACT was 26, and the average GPA, the cumulative average, was 3.43. The same chart on the left, 2019, this is projected, we're looking at an ACT again of 26, but a GPA of 3.68, an increase. That's a projected number. Go back one bar to your left, and you'll see that for 2018, we actually had a 3.64 GPA. We're pretty confident about that 3.68, but again, we have to wait until all the students get in so we can accurately tabulate that. But even if we don't, we see a 0.2 increase on the GPA, an ACT that held relatively constant, and then the chart to your right, enrollment of students in color going through the roof. In 2015, we had 1,488 students of color, underrepresented students. In 2019, we will likely have 2,267. 2018, we know we had 2,077. And so we see the increases in students of color, and on the chart to the left, we see the increases in the GPA. It refutes the notion that increasing diversity is going to somehow dilute quality. And we're very proud to say that we've done both, increased quality as we have increased diversity. There are lots and lots and lots of ways in which we've been able to do that. And a good bit of that work has been done through the Office of Diversity, which is located in 130, the central office located in 135 Thomas Boyd. Our Office of Multicultural Affairs, which does the lion's share of our programming events for students, located in the Student Union. We also have an African American Culture Center that was last year named for one of your own former board members, Clarence Barney. And we have a Women's Center, which in addition to housing issues and concerns relative to women, also has an LGBTQ plus resource room for students from those students and faculty from those populations. In your package, you see a whole host of additional slides and materials that explain how we do this. This increasing diversity, not only in terms of enrollment, but also in terms of graduation, which Dr. Alexander highlights every single graduation, the increases that we've had in the last 5 years. We will continue to push and we will continue to do this work. We don't do it in isolation. Those offices that are listed work in partnership with many of the deans, with all of the deans, and with many of the campuses around the state. In closing, I'd like to say that one of our mottos and our mantra is that diversity is good for everyone. And we certainly live that and we believe that. But as I stand before you 5 years after arriving at this institution and coming to this very meeting, diversity was summed up in the person of Ann Duplessis. She was the only person of color and the only woman on the board. And as I look at this gathering this afternoon, I see significant improvements in this group as well. We'll mirror that and continue to push for the rest of the institution. Thank you, and I'll take any questions.
Mr. Rivera?
Yes.
Obviously, diversity, at any great university, we need the fullness of the talents of everybody across all the spectrum, and that's why I think diversity is an important issue for everyone, not just in some small areas or some group of people. It's important for a great university. I see with the statistics here, improvements and paths that are very positive. One area of concern that jumps out at me is the lack of diversity among our deans here at LSU.
Can you pull up PowerPoint slide number 6 to that point?
How many deans do we have who are minorities at LSU?
On the main campus, we have one.
That's an interim dean.
Say it again. And that's an interim, absolutely.
So full-time permanent deans, we have 0 on the.
0.
And what about other LSU campuses?
It looks like one as well.
Is that a permanent or an interim?
I'm not familiar with who that one is. Does anybody have that information?
Now, is that I want that to improve. Is that
Yes.
Is that an application problem? Is that a recruitment issue? Is there something we can do to improve?
It's an intentionality problem. We interviewed a couple of years ago for the Dean of the College of Engineering, and we had 4 finalists. And of those 4 finalists, you'd probably be surprised to know that 3 were female and 2 were people of color. We weren't able to get any of the women of color, but we did get a female dean in engineering, which is a significant improvement. Doesn't address the question of race and ethnicity. And so we've had folks come on campus. We have not been able to get them hired. And some will say, and I'll take advantage of the time here, some will say, well, it's a matter of the pipeline. I disagree. I think there are a number of very talented people of color who would be willing to do and can do these positions. We just have to be more aggressive as we go after them and letting them know that this is a good place to work.
Thank you. Anyone have any other questions?
And to that point, Dr. Rivas, the talent pool that we have here of the African Americans, what's being done to give them the opportunities to compete for these jobs? I mean, can anybody speak to that?
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
We've got lots of talent here already.
Right.
Talent from diverse groups.
Right.
What's being done to give them the opportunity to grow here at LSU so that we don't lose them to other universities?
Right. And that's a very good point, Ms. Jones. The problem is that there are a lot of schools looking for these very talented people.
Absolutely.
And we lose some because better offers come along either financially or other kinds of incentives. What we do here is to try and support the ones that are here through professional development opportunities. We have diversity grants for faculty members here. We also created 2 years ago an opportunity hire program, which helps bring in faculty of color. And so there are initiatives, but there's much more that we've got to do. We've added on to our current recruitment information, additional websites and publications where we will advertise including diverse issues in higher education, insight to diversity, and the American Association of Blacks in Higher Ed as well. The crucial piece, though, is that many of these folks are being recruited right from underneath us, and we've got to make sure that they're happy and sufficiently taken care of here, so that when that offer comes, they've got someone, they've got a place that they can stay.
Yeah, I mean, I can appreciate reaching out, but we've got a lot of talent right here already. And just, I would love to see them have the opportunity to be deans, to be executive directors, administrators. As a female, a black female,
there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And I will say further that it has to be intentional, as you're suggesting.
yeah, this is sad.
I will echo what Mrs. Jones is saying. This is unacceptable. I mean, this slide alone, this is unacceptable. It's embarrassing to be a part of. This is a pitiful statistic. In 2019, at the flagship university for this state, with all the things we have going on, this sends the complete wrong message. The statistic is awful. And if you go, can you go to number 5? Look at executive staff. We're not just picking on deans. This is also unacceptable. That gender disparity is unacceptable. We are making slow strides. I think when Valencia and Glenn and I joined this board in 2016, there wasn't one person of color who worked in this building at all. So we have put a lot of effort, it seems, into diversifying our student population. But although today we saw that our supply diversity, after a lot of stops and starts, is finally moving along, this seems like the next area where we need to become aggressive and make these statistics something that we can all be proud of. Because I'm not proud of these. And I hope no one is. Do we have a plan to remedy this? King?
Well, with the searches that we have going on, we've asked that Derek be involved in, his office be involved in every search to remind everybody to even reach out to every possible opportunity, not just the traditional areas, but to diversify every one of our searches on our campus. And Derek, your team goes in and meets with every search committee, and the expectation is that we bring in candidates of diverse color, as well as underrepresented populations, and we need to do better at it. And we know we need to do better at it, and we're going to do better at it. But right now, with the searches that we have, we expect diversity. We expect when candidates are brought to me, we expect to have diverse options and have diverse candidates, diverse qualified candidates that we can recruit and retain. That's our expectation.
I'm sorry.
What percentage of our,
Valencia, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so that's for the A&M campus. What about across all of the campuses?
That expectation is on all of our campuses, and every one of our chancellors is expected to follow the same guidelines, that every one of our searches expect diverse pools, and our chancellors expect to see diverse candidates come forward as part of those diverse pools. And that is the expectation that we have with our chancellors and the expectation that we have in the leadership of all of our campuses.
Pennington Biomedical Research Center executive staff, 100% white, 83.3% male. Where was the other one? Administrators, LSU Alexandria, 100% male. If we're doing what we've always done, we're going to get what we've always gotten. And if Derek Riveras is already going out, if what you're describing is what we've already done, then I would suggest that perhaps we need to find new, different, better, more effective ways to improve on these statistics.
Yeah, can I ask a question? Mr. Perry?
So in our methodology, when we do searches, is most of the work, most of the candidates attracted by posting those jobs on various academic platforms and people apply to us? Do we go out and attempt to recruit? private business, I use, when I'm going after VPs or the equivalent of deans here, you know, I always use an executive search firm. We have criteria to go out and retract A, B, you know, A, B, C. Do we actually do that, or is it more?
I think when we look at our finalists for the last few searches for dean and higher positions that I've seen, it's been the outreach. It's been the phone call to folks. It's been the next step. We refer to job postings as passive recruitment. We try to do the more active recruitment that says that we've got to span the networks that exist and try to find these folks. So no, it's not simply putting it in more publications. It's that plus. We did not get those 4 finalists for the engineering dean by simply posting those positions. Those were phone calls to individuals.
So here's what I had to do in my company, because things, look, here's the reality of the world. When you're going out recruiting, if the people who are doing the recruiting come from a particular base, they go out and recruit from those they know, and those who they have either relationships with or whom they have contact or professional contact with. It's not, they're not biased against getting a diverse group of candidates, but they tend to revert to their own knowledge areas and comfort zones. So maybe one of the things we have to be careful of is, if we're doing search for certain deans, that the people who are doing the outreach from that academic area or college area, maybe we have to make sure that there's a more diverse part there and not just you being a reminder. I think that would actually really help. I will tell you the other thing we do for every position that really matters is we instituted a few years ago the Rooney Rule. Now, you know, you guys are all familiar with the Rooney Rule, named after the Pittsburgh Steelers owner and founder, to make sure that the requirement in the NFL that African-American candidates be interviewed for every single head coaching position. When you adopt expectations like that formalize your intent or your heart, what happens is it changes the mind of the people that go out doing recruitment. Because I think for the most part, it's not that they possess some inherent bias or malintent. What they do is they just go within the zone of the world that they know and see. So maybe we could give some more guidance there and make sure that I think we have more institutionalized the expectations on our searches, particularly as deals with race and gender. You look at the student population, LSU 57% female now. And you see the progress we're making with our students. So I think maybe we can all think about better ways to go out and, because you have to actually change something you're doing to have an impact. You can't do it all the same way. Now, I believe that you choose the very best candidates you can. And so this is not a guide on that. Like in engineering, it was great to hear, 5 finalists, 3 women, 2 African American. We end up with actually a female with a PhD from MIT. Pretty good. Well, the quality of that search gave a good opportunity for us to evaluate. So maybe we can think about ways to do that, to expand beyond just his impact on the search and advising, but in making sure that the academic leaders that are a part of that decision-making are more diverse as well. And I think that will produce the results that we're looking for.
Mr. Mallett?
To Steve's point, I totally agree with him. Mr. Chairman, you created a committee to study something a while ago. It would seem that you ought to create a group of this men and women to rate the protocols that would help make this turnaround. I think Steve's right on point, but at the same time, somebody's got to put some protocols in place, because you're right, Steve's right. Look, don't go too forward.
Yeah.
I'm picking at you, Steve.
That's fair.
But I mean that. I think Steve's 100% correct. If you was to put a committee or task, whatever you want to call it, where we set protocols in place to help these people become more diverse, just like a while ago we're concerned about diversity. It's the same thing.
Mr. Dan?
Just to echo Lee and to echo Steve, obviously what we're doing is not great, it's not working, the Rooney Rule has proven to work in the NFL, and there's some,
But absolutely.
for everybody, but there's some great examples of it working and great success stories, and it's a great, relatively easy thing to implement and changes the focus. I think it's a great tool.
Sometimes the barrier to access to something is not the bad intention of the person doing it, but it's lack of information of the potential pool. And so I don't believe the university is intentionally trying to do it. I think they've defaulted into their comfort zones of who do we know and who do we go after. Oh, I know the person at Duke. Oh, I know the person at University of Tennessee. Dot, dot, dot. It's just sort of a natural. So we just need to think of some newer methodologies to apply to help you in your objectives.
Sure.
So, I'm glad we had this discussion. This was just a presentation item. Maybe, just Mr. Perry's point, maybe the thing to do is to, when we formulate these search committees, have Derek or someone from his office be a member of the search committee. Mr. Brown?
I'd like to bring up another point. Do you, are you involved with student recruitment?
Yes.
Other campuses?
Yes, sir.
Well, I had visited with Dr. Ghali about minority participation in the med school in Shreveport, which is low. And what, you know, some of the things we found out is that we need more emphasis in our elementary and high school to foster those and inform those kids and educate them to get into the position to be able to get in med school. And another thing, what Dr. Ghali had pointed out to me that some of the problems that they're having in recruiting those top minority students are same thing with the staff positions we're trying to fill, is that those are recruited heavily by out-of-state universities and colleges. So a lot of them from Shreveport may end up going, you know, somewhere else rather than staying in Shreveport for med school. And then, so I don't know what the answer is, but we need some mentoring. We need some education. You know, and certainly awareness is a big portion of it. But I think we need to work on. I'm not sure how the med school is in New Orleans, but probably very similar. A lot of our med students there are children or of medical doctors and so forth that you know they come up in an environment, a family that naturally can get into med school easily. So we just I just want to raise that awareness that we need to work on. The A&M is great with what we're doing here on the campus, but the med school situation I think needs special emphasis on getting.
And with due respect, I think we're making great strides, but I don't think we're great yet here at the main campus either. Even in the student numbers, we've got some work that we've got to do, and it takes that intentionality. So if we're going to get a kid to go to Shreveport for medical school, we've got to get that kid to Shreveport to let them see the campus and make sure that they feel like this is a place where they can succeed. Because if you're able to get into a med school, chances you're able to get into two. And if you get the pick, you're going to go to the one that you think you have the best chances to succeed. I think historically, many students have looked at some of our campuses and not felt that. And we've been able to turn that notion certainly here in Baton Rouge and working to do that at our other campuses as well.
Mr. Williams?
Yes, I just want to say thank you for the information. It's good to have these statistics. Thank you, Mr. Starnes, for your commitment to this issue. Similarly to, as Mr. Mallett suggested, and your suggestion is a good one, so I'm going to take it. Similar to the way we created the ad hoc committee on funding earlier this meeting, I don't think we need an ad hoc committee because the oversight committee is handling this, but I am asking Mr. Starnes if your committee, by the next board meeting in September, could take a look at this issue and put together a set of recommendations that we can make that the university can implement to have the policies and procedures, Rooney Rule type things in place to maybe help out with these statistics and give that report to us at the September meeting.
Of course, Mr. Chair, we look forward to that task.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Reverse, thank you very much. I think you're doing an excellent job, and I may contact you about these things to get your ideas about what we can do from supervisor perspective in terms of policy to help achieve the objectives that I know we all want to achieve.
And to be sure, we'll be glad to help. I was going to volunteer to help with that anyway. That's something that we're passionate about. If we continue to bring in the diverse students and we don't change the faculty or the leadership, it's not going to sustain. Students are able to make choices based upon places that make them feel comfortable, and we've got to do that both in the faculty and at these executive leadership positions. One other caution is that it is small in. The number of deans that we have on these campuses, the number of administrators, it's not a large number. It doesn't have a whole lot of turnover, but when it does, we need to be very diligent and dutiful about trying to recruit and actually hire some more diversity.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was just an information item. The next item is something we've worked on quite a bit, and it is the proposed uniform affiliation agreement. I wanted to present that for approval today, but owing to the late hour at which we received our draft of it, I thought it better that we give everyone a chance to vet it, including our partners, the foundations. We're a very important part of what we do here, integral to part of what we do here. I will say that we've had unbelievably large number of discussions about the uniform affiliation agreement since I've been a supervisor. We had meetings with the dean of our audit school. We have had talks with council about best practices. We had a presentation at a board dinner regarding best practices and legal requirements of uniform affiliation agreements. And pursuant to that, I'd like to call upon Mr. DeQueer, who has been assisting us with this, to present the tweaks that we are proposing for the uniform affiliation.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Starnes. And given it's June and Friday afternoon, I told him I would be a total of 3 minutes. We looked at the uniform affiliation agreement, and I talked with your general counsel about it, and it was solid. We added 3 minor things that we actually discussed at the dinner last month. One is a provision that would allow the chair to also appoint an ex officio non-voting board member of your affiliates. The second provision, and for your reference, would be on page 6, and that would say for your affiliates that have more than one purpose, they would be required to enter into a cooperative endeavor or some other written agreement outlining the purpose and the net public benefit of each transaction. And then the third minor change is on page 7, and that would be in the event of a termination, the university would have the right to request that the affiliate either return all funds raised in the name of the university or have those funds placed in another affiliate that does have an affiliation agreement. This would obviously exclude any encumbered funds or funds that had been pledged to secure indebtedness. You wouldn't be able to move those. So the affiliation agreement was solid. We had talked about adding 3 provisions just to tighten it up a little bit, and those were the 3 provisions that we have proposed.
Those 3 tweaks that you spoke about, you've done these types of agreements for other university systems?
Yes, the 2 other systems we represent require those, not the board provision, but they require the fund clawback in their affiliation.
That's a standard provision.
That's a standard provision.
And the Memorandum of Understanding Cooperative Endeavor Agreement requirement, that is so that we can specify the net university benefit that is required by law in the relationship between the university and foundations.
Yes, it's also so, and I ran this scenario by Tom. We, at one time, had an affiliate with a different university offer to go hire recruiters in various states around the country as a university benefit. We didn't have an agreement for it. The affiliate didn't pay the recruiters, and the recruiters showed up at the university wanting to be paid. And for things like that, you want there to be an agreement saying, if you're going to do this for us, this is what we're going to pick up, this is what you're going to pick up, so at the end of the day, everybody knows who's supposed to pay what on each transaction.
Mr. DeQueer, you weren't here earlier when we discussed the diversity supplier program, and we discovered that while it's a university policy, it's not necessarily a policy of our foundations, is requiring our affiliates and foundations in either the UAA or a memorandum of understanding or cooperative endeavor agreement. Is that something that's appropriate for one of those things
Well,
ask the foundation's affiliates to follow our diversity supplier policy?
You could do that as part of your affiliation agreement, or you could incorporate that in the cooperative endeavors or the agreements by transaction. And the reason I say you could do it either way, you may have a large foundation that does a bunch of different things. On a construction deal, you may want the construction contract to have some obligations to do certain things with suppliers. On strictly a professional services deal, you may want different obligations with certain suppliers. So you could do it both ways. You know, you could mandate it specific to each transaction, or you could do it overall in the affiliation agreement.
Mr. Chairman, as I said, the initial goal was to have this for approval today. We changed it to a presentation of an information item. And that was with the expectation that I would call a meeting of this committee within a month or so for the purpose of approval, and give a chance to speak with everybody involved that's concerned about this, so that we can have the best agreement we can have, and maybe further our discussions about the diversity supplier provision in whatever we do with you, Mr.
And not to skip subjects, I will tell you that is a struggle across the state with all of our clients. I mean, it's all of our schools are struggling to get that in place.
Brent, one quick question. I understood first and third of your recommendations. I was a little unclear about the second. What does that mean, creating a report on each transaction?
Not a report, either a cooperative endeavor. The language is either a cooperative endeavor, a memorandum of understanding, or some other written agreement. And when I mean transaction, a transaction is not somebody putting a debit card in and sending $50 to a foundation. A transaction is a foundation deciding we want to undertake this obligation for the school. You would have a written agreement for that obligation explaining what your foundation's going to do at what cost and what the school's going to provide at what cost. So at the end of the day, everybody's clear as to who's paying what and who's supplying what in this particular transaction.
Could you give us an example of a target? I'll just make one up. TAF and helping pay off a football coach that's been terminated, or ABCD, or helping, not in a big hole.
Well, let's take your football coach contract. Your football coach contract as it stands has it's a contract. It has clear terms as to what portion the school's going to pay and what portion TAF is going to pay. If you terminate a coach and TAF decides we want to pay off the balance, you would want some agreement between the university and TAF saying, we're doing this for your benefit and we're going to pick this up all ourselves, or we're going to pick this up 50-50, or, you just want something memorializing what are the rules or what are the terms by which TAF is going to do something above what they promised under the contract.
So I use that as an example just because that's a more significant scale of dollars.
Yeah.
But the way we would define this would be important, because we could, you could bring this down to some micro scale.
No, this
Ridiculous.
I think this comes from, so there's a requirement in the law, the law that allows us to affiliate, that allows us to do these things through affiliated organizations, Winston, correct me if I'm wrong, requires us to explicitly spell out the benefit that the university is going to give and what the university is giving up. Because we haven't formalized that requirement, we've had situations where we enter into affiliations with folk, but that hasn't been spelled out. So if it unravels for some reason, there's no documentation, there's no paper trail that says we were going to get this, you were going to get that. And so, is that right, Winston?
Yes.
And so what we're trying to do is close the hole that exists because we're not complying with that part of the law that allows us to affiliate.
That's right, and the legal term is net university benefit. There has to be, whatever our foundations or affiliates do on behalf of LSU has to have a net university benefit to LSU. Well, what is that? And the answer is, well, in these memorandums of understanding, this is how other systems have dealt with this. Whenever we're going to build this building, we're going to hire this, something this coach's pay. We're going to do all the many wonderful things the universities and foundation does for us. In our memorandum of understanding, it's going to say the net university benefit to whatever is this. Here's what they're going to do. Here's what we're going to do, and this is why it's a net university benefit. And that's something that is going to help us comply with the law, and it's a best practice. It's something.
So an affiliation agreement with an entity doing a construction project, be it TAF or the Nicholson Drive or whatever, you don't contemplate this getting into things where just like change orders and changes in contracts.
No. Absolutely.
No.
And about just the overall.
Right.
In fact, what this contemplates, when you get into the provision we've written, is this is written for affiliates that will have more than one purpose. For an affiliate that's a sole purpose, like you create a subsidiary just to build a specific dorm, well, the affiliation agreement would be limited to that one purpose, and it would spell out the quid pro quo. But some of your organizations, you have multiple transactions with, multiple development projects with, and what this is saying is on each of these projects, you should have an agreement outlining what the quid pro quo is on that project.
And the way this, and I'm not going to comment on that, I think you're correct. But the way this started is we need more accountability, I thought, in the way we dealt with our foundations. The initial proposed uniform affiliation agreement, which was, as Mr. DePere said, was solid, didn't really call for that. And I started asking questions about what is our ability to audit the foundations or make sure that everything is going right from our perspective to protect the university. And I was convinced that there was another way, and Mr. DePere at that board dinner proposed one. I think that's what we've adopted, and I'm very happy with this. I would like to see some more discussion about including the diversity supplier program in these types of agreements and as appropriate. But again, thank you, Mr. DePere. Does anyone else have any comments or questions? Dr. Alexander?
Winston, it's always good to have you back, and thank you for your recommendations. And if you could just comment that the fact that we have taken all of your recommendations and moved forward, we greatly appreciate the council, and we appreciate that we will make those available to everybody as well on things that we are adopting and have adopted, thanks to the work that you have done.
Okay, thank you very much.
Are there any other questions? Thank you, Mr. DePere. Is there any other questions or comments? Mr. Chairman, I would like to schedule that meeting at some time appropriate with you for the Affiliates Foundation. Obviously, like Dr. Alexander said, I'd like to have all of our foundations be able to get their input in these proposals. And with that, I think that was just an information item for today. The business of the Affiliate Foundations Committee, Oversight Committee has been concluded, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Damp, motion on Mr. Damp, second by Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Starnes. I think your idea for a special meeting of your committee is a good idea, and I thank you also for the hard work that you've done. You've done a very good job this year with a very difficult committee. Mr. Damp, would you please convene the Legal Affairs Committee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Griffith, would you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mr. Damp?
Here.
Mr. Armenter?
Here.
Mr. Anderson?
Here.
Mr. Brazel?
Here.
Mr. Perry? Here. Mr. Starnes?
Here.
Ms. Werner? Here. Mr. Yarborough? Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. At this time, I'd ask a motion for the committee to enter into an executive session to discuss litigation and potential litigation as noticed on the agenda.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Mr. Starnes, second by,
Do a roll call,
Point of order.
roll call vote on that?
Absolutely. That's what I was going to say. Point of order, we give roll call before going into executive.
Okay, roll call. Mr. Damp?
here.
Mr. Armenter?
Yes or no?
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
I'm sorry, yes or, roll call vote on yes or no
Yes
going
or no.
into executive session of the committee.
Okay, yes, sir. Mr. Damp?
Yes.
Mr. Armenter?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Brazel?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Starnes?
Yes.
Ms. Werner? Yes. Mr. Yarborough. Thank you. There's agreement to go into executive.
Mr. Damp, I'd suggest that we take up item number 2 first, and then I follow that with item number 1. Let's plan on doing that. That's relevant for the council and the audience more than for the...
Mr. Chairman, could you give the audience
That's a good point.
How many items do we have?
I think it's an hour.
30 minutes.
Tom, he's number 2, right?
See, he's practicing to be a.
Robert more than that.
I can't.
didn't realize we get
To
I got a flight to New Orleans.
what happened.
Tom, do we need a roll call or just a vote to come out, a voice vote? Just a roll call vote to come out?
I need a motion to conclude the executive session.
So moved. Second.
Vote, not roll.
Let's do a call the roll. A roll call vote, please.
Yes, sir. Mr. Dance?
Yes.
Mr. Armenter?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Brazel?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Here.
Mr. Starnes?
Here.
Yes.
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 Ms. Werner?
Yes.
Okay, all members.
It's a vote to come out of executive session, yes or no?
Yes. And now I need a motion to conclude the committee for today. Mr. Starnes?
So moved.
Mr. Armentar?
Yes.
That's a second. Would you call the roll? Or we just need a voice vote? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We'll now come back to order and reconvene the board meetings. Ms. Griffith, would you please call the roll for the board?
Yes. Mr. Williams?
Here.
Ms. Werner? Here. Mr. Perry?
Here.
Mr. Anderson?
Here.
Mr. Armenter?
Here.
Mr. Blossman?
Here.
Mr. Brazel?
Here.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Shadowland?
Here.
Mr. Damp?
Here.
Ms. Jones? Here. Mr. Mallett?
Here.
Mr. Moore?
Here.
Mr. Starnes?
Here.
Mr. Woods?
Here.
Mr. Yarborough? Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes from our last board meeting.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Aye. No objection, the minutes are approved. We'll now move to personnel actions requiring board approval. There's a personnel action related to Professor Lang of the LSU School of Veterinary Medicine, to which the president is recommending termination upon the recommendation of a faculty hearing panel. Are there any questions? Is there a motion to approve the president's recommendation to terminate this employment?
So moved.
Second.
Any objection? Hearing no objection, the motion is
Let's do a roll call on that, just to be sure.
okay. Roll call vote to approve the president's recommendation to terminate employment, please.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Ms. Werner?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Armenter?
Yes.
Mr. Blossman?
Yes.
Mr. Brazel?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Shadowland?
Yes.
Mr. Damp?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Mallett?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Starnes?
Yes.
Mr. Woods?
Yes.
Mr. Yarborough? All have agreed.
Thank you. With that vote, the motion carries. The next item on the agenda is a proposed amendment to the president's contract to reflect the change in housing from a private residence to the university residence, and a clarification of the provisions of a vehicle or vehicle allowance. Are there any questions about this amendment to the president's contract? Hearing no questions, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the contract amendment.
So moved.
Second.
Any objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved. It's now time for our faculty and staff advisor reports. Tammy Milliken, please give us the staff advisor.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I am here representing President of Staff Senate Rachel Henry, as she is working on a very important thing, which is giving presentations at orientation to our new students and their parents. We have transitioned into new exec leadership, and so Rachel is serving as president. She is from Auxiliary Services, and our president-elect is Jonathan Levesque from LSU Athletics. A brief update on the resolutions that we have been working on, first being the protocol for the death of an employee. That document has been reviewed by legal counsel and sent back. We are providing final comments this afternoon, and it will move into the approval process. On representation on critical hire search committees for Staff Senate, a standard operating procedure has been created, and we are reviewing that at this time. The resolution for campus lactation rooms, we are now at 17 lactation rooms on campus. We are in the process of creating a website with resources for our student, faculty, and staff parents. And we have also concluded the first training of pregnancy advocates on campus. And we are also planning to bring awareness of these lactation rooms and resources at events such as Fall Fest, the Benefits Fair, and others. I'm excited to let you know that we had our largest group of staff volunteers for spring commencement to hand out water and give people rides to commencement. If you remember what the weather was like, we did not need any more water, and boats would have been more appropriate than the golf carts we had. Council of Staff Advisors met yesterday. LSU Health Science Center is working to establish their own staff senate. LSU in Shreveport is working on a wellness leave policy and establishing a crisis leave pool for their employees. And staff at all campuses are signing up to volunteer for move-in days on the individual campus. Per PM 37, there will also be a rotation of leadership for the Council of Staff Advisors. And so effective July 1st, Ashley Gautreaux from the AG will become chair and begin reporting to you in September. I greatly appreciate your willingness to listen to staff issues throughout my term as Staff Senate President. And so I am going to leave with one little gift that each of one of you will receive. We often tell our staff that Staff Senate has their back. And so we have created a back scratcher, which you will all get. The other side of it, we had to explain to our students what this is. It's a shoehorn, and apparently it's not used very often, but it is for you. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Dr. Kim McMillan, representing the faculty advisors, would you please provide remarks?
Thank you very much, Chair Williams, Vice Chair Werner, and the rest of the board. It's always a pleasure for me to come, although I don't think you imagine how hard it is to follow the staff representative when they give a really good, concise report. I'm going to be very brief as I can, because I know your time is still limited. We're very appreciative that Mr. Chatelain and Mr. Perry and then Mr. Williams with his ad hoc committee recognize some of the difficulties that the faculty have. We have been doing more with less for about a decade, 12 years, sometimes in cases 15 years. We're also trying to help because we understand we live in a digital age. Online courses are here. They're important. But we can't expect the same faculty who are already overworked to also do an online course. So we appreciate Mr. Blossman and his committee looking at revenues versus expenses, because there's always a balance there. We appreciate that. We also very much appreciate that you understand the role of the faculty. So we're very appreciative of the conversation that you had earlier in today. Some of the things we're doing here at the university is we are transitioning general education into an integrative learning core. One of the difficulties with that is the Board of Regents. Board of Regents approves everything that you have delegated as far as educational policy to the faculty. It's not just our administrators that we have to convince, we also then, and they have to convince the Board of Regents that this is what we should do with our courses and our curricula. So programmatically, yes, it is a tedious process. So anything that any of you can do legislatively or with the Board of Regents would certainly help us, because faculty get as dissatisfied as everyone else when it takes a long time to maneuver through the bureaucratic process. When it comes to online courses, there are several obstacles that, again, will be coming to you this next year. One of those is ownership of intellectual property. Can't expect a faculty member to spend extra time on developing intellectual property, whether it's in a course or online, and then have the university digitize it and say, we no longer need you to teach that course. And so in that regard, there will be some discussions about that. Another is copyright, again, on the same type of materials. And last but not least, we're appreciative of the free speech policy that was passed. We're working on an academic freedom policy to fit that. I wasn't going to say anything except you spent some time on it. When it comes to diversity, I've served on most of the search committees for the major administrative positions for the last 3 years, and I can honestly say diversity is always at the forefront of those candidates. What we need to think about, meaning you and the faculty and administration, is how can we drive ourselves to be better competitors? You had lunch at one of our most competitive parts of LSU. We need to make academics as equally competitive, and that's going to, again, tax Mr. Blossman's committee to figure out how we can do that. Our perception becomes our reality that we're a great university. That doesn't necessarily make us competitive in the eyes of those who aren't here at LSU or who are not alumni, and that's what we need to think about. We also had elections at our noontime meeting, according to PM 24, Council of Faculty Advisors, and so in that regard, I would like to introduce John Vancheri from Health Science Center at New Orleans, who will be your chair for the Council of Faculty Advisors this next year.
If I may just have 1 minute for those who I haven't met. I'm a second-generation Louisiana pediatrician. I grew up in Lake Charles, and I've been on the faculty in Shreveport for 12 years. And I had the great pleasure of handing my daughter her diploma as she walked across the stage at our medical school in May. And I appreciate the board members who were there, Ms. Werner especially. And my father is a 1964 graduate of the medical school in New Orleans. Our roots are deep here in Louisiana. I appreciate the confidence of my colleagues to represent the faculty over the next year, and I believe you've heard some of the major issues that are important. Faculty salaries, we've heard the 7.3% figure, but I think it's important to look at the whole benefits package, because what's going into our retirement accounts is less than Social Security, and that's something that should be fixed. There are significant inequities between campuses and even within campuses about pay for faculty by rank, and those should all be looked at, not just the summation number of the 7.3% below Southern average. And we as faculty recognize and appreciate the new discussion on evaluation of the president, because as faculty, we are the only people in the food chain at LSU who actually have a 360-degree evaluation right now. Students evaluate every lecture we give, and our chairman evaluates us on an annual basis. And we think that that is the paradigm of business that should be applied within all of our campuses, that there should be 360-degree evaluation at the rank of chairman, at our administrative levels, all the way up. So for right now, it's the president and the faculty, but sorry guys, we think that that's the fair way to go. You're going to learn a lot by those evaluations, and those are opportunities for improvement. Those are the opportunities for our whole mission to move forward. And then finally, as Dr. McMillan pointed out, our faculty get committed to many new things. And online education, innovation, all of those things are absolutely critical to moving forward. But when the faculty are committed by our leadership to do those things, we should have input in those. And we won't see Boyd professors who can do jazz and classical music without the luxury of innovation. The faculty, the academic centers, our businesses are the generators of innovation in our society, and faculty must have that protected time for those intellectual pursuits. And without that, we become just teachers. I say that in a very apologetic way, because teachers are the engine, right? Teachers drive our students and drive them forward, but the innovation of academics is what we as faculty drive. So we appreciate your support, and we look forward to working with you over the next year, not just in the 1 or 2 minutes here in front of the board, and you get to see our smiling faces down here, but really to interact with the board so that you understand what we're doing for our students. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this time, we'll have the president's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief as well. I'd like to first welcome officially to his official duties Paul Carell back. Paul, welcome back as our Chancellor of LSUA, and I know the excitement in Alexandria seems to be everywhere that you're back and you're back in town. I'd also like to welcome new to the LSU family, Dr. Nancy Sorensen at LSU Eunice. Nancy comes to us from Hillsborough Community College, where she was a president in a system there one of the biggest community college systems in the United States, and also came, before that, she was in Pico in Tucson, Arizona, which is another major community college entity in Arizona. I'd like to point out that Nancy got her doctorate at the University of Texas, Austin, under the advisor, Dr. Walter Bumpus, who is head of the American Association of Community Colleges. Walter Bumpus is a dear friend from way back, and she comes with great credentials, and she comes with amazing experience, and we are thrilled to death to have you now officially on board at LSU Eunice. And Nancy, would you care to have a few comments, please?
Well, Mr. President, Board of Supervisors, colleagues here, I am just thrilled to be here, and thank you for your words of confidence and support. I really believe that LSU Eunice is a very dear and special place. It really, as I said to President Alexander and to Dr. Richardson and the committee, it just really captured my heart, because one of the questions were, well, you know, you're going to come from Tampa to Eunice. And I said, you know, it's really not about the size of the community, it's about the people. And it doesn't matter how big or how small the community is, it's about the people and their relationships. So I greatly look forward to building relationships with everyone in this room. I started on Monday and have learned a lot already. I have a lot more to learn, but more importantly, I have a lot of listening to do, and that's what I plan to do intently in the first few months that I'm here. So I, again, am deeply honored to be a part of an institution with the international reputation such as LSU, and thank you very much for selecting me to fill this role.
Chancellor Sorensen, welcome to the team, and we look forward to getting over to Eunice to welcome you further. I know a number of us will be there. Is it July 8th? July 8th.
Yeah.
So we can welcome the community and welcome everybody together.
Thank you.
Mr. Perry.
We're especially glad to have you joining Stacy in that role of both white men that are sitting on the front. It's nice to have more diversity.
I guess I did, didn't I? Yeah.
Thank you and welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard. A couple things. The research activities on campus continue to move forward, and I'm pleased to say that we're going to have one of our record years in research expenditure improvement, and we're up about 5% in research improvement, and we have about 20% in number of applications that are still waiting. Just to give you an idea of what some of these activities have brought for us, I'd like to thank Ronnie Anderson and certainly Bill Richardson, our Vice President Bill Richardson, for the work that they've done with the Louisiana Rice Research Board, which gave $1 million in January to fund an academic chair dedicated for rice research at the LSU Ag Center. And just a couple days ago at the 110th Annual Rice Research Field Day on June 26th, they added an additional $500,000 was awarded by the Rice Research Board for the first chair, who's named Don Groth, Rice Research Station Director. So we really appreciate the work and the contributions of the Louisiana Rice Research Board. Also in the Ag Center, the Patrick F. Taylor Foundation gave $1.4 million to LSU Ag Center, and we accepted the gift out at the Burden Center to conduct research reducing nutrient runoff from crop fields. And if you've been following the growth of the dead zone just south of us in the Gulf of Mexico, that's exactly what this issue is all about. So as you can see, in Pennington has a number of grants. Pennington Biomedical faculty member Owen Carmichael, Daniel Hasa, and Leanne Redmond were awarded $3.1 million from the Nestle Nutrition Institute to study the effects of new infant formula on infant brain development. As you can see, we've had a lot of researchers generating a lot of research dollars, and research expenditures will indeed exceed over nearly $130 million. That is a vital component of what a research university does. And we want certainly the Board of Regents and our legislature to understand the distinctive mission that our university has in the research-related areas. The Fierce for the Future campaign continues to roll, and I'm pleased to announce that we have just broken, as of, I heard yesterday, we have broken the halfway point at $752 million in our $1.5 billion campaign. That also surpasses the last campaign total, which was $750 million goal in 2011. So we're way ahead of schedule, and I'd like to thank our fundraisers and all the work that our fundraisers are doing. This year's contributions will account for nearly $262 million with in-kind support as well as donor support, which is another record, single-year record for our institution. And we look forward to coming to all the campuses to kick off some of the campaign activities on your own campuses so we can piggyback off the energy that's already been generated and as we can go forward. And finally, I'd like to announce our summer commencement time is coming up. It'll be in August, faster than you think. And I'm proud to announce our August speaker will be none other than the guy sitting right next to me to my left. Our chairman, Mr. James Williams, will be our commencement speaker at the August main campus LSU graduation ceremony. So we look forward to...
He'll rock the house if he does what he did at LSU Shreveport.
No pressure, no pressure. What is the date? I know August, there's a lot of days in August.
Is it the 8th?
2nd.
August the 2nd. It's August the 2nd in the PMAC auditorium. So, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my remarks.
Mr. President,
Yes,
I wanted to give the...
Oh, I'm sorry, the mitigation bank.
Quick briefing, I'll be very brief. As you know, for the last probably several years, we've been working on the mitigation bank down at the San Gabriel Research Station. We have sent out an SFO, we've got that back. We've selected a vendor. We're in the process now working through that. We're going to bring this to you at your next board meeting, and it's quite an elaborate contract. We want to have you have plenty of time to review it and ask any questions that you may have. We're going to be enhancing our property and being able to sell mitigation credits, which in this watershed should be quite lucrative as we move forward. You still own the property. We'll put trees on it. We'll still able to use it, but we just can't graze it and we can't farm it. And the subcontractor, one of the subcontractors, is a certified woman-owned business, which we think is a wonderful step forward. We'll receive land money yearly on a land lease, in addition to royalty income off of each of those credits that are sold. We're going to use this for endowed chairs, scholarship opportunities for students, natural resource and conservation projects, ownership opportunities, and it'll be about a 900-acre outdoor laboratory for our students, undergraduate, graduate, not only for the Ag Center, but for the entire campus to use. So we're in the process now of finishing this up. We'll bring a full proposal back to you at the September board meeting, and so you'll have plenty of time to review it before we approve it.
Hey, Doctor, could you, when we have the, I'm sorry.
Can I ask you one quick question? This may be to Ronnie as much as you, but just off the top of your head, we're talking about success in rice and wet soils and so forth. Do y'all remember off the top of your head what the percentage of the rice grown in America that actually comes from Louisiana? It used to be pretty significant, right?
Still is. I don't know the percentage, but it's...
60% is the number we've used quite often.
That's a generally accepted 60% of the rice.
We've got the premier rice research breeding program in the United States and the world. And so most of the varieties that are used, remember the rice is not just one variety, it's a lot of uses. So, but most of it's developed in Crowley. University of Arkansas Stuttgart also has a very good program, and we do corporate work back and forth with them. So
we attract international students interested in that program in particular?
Yeah, we've got a lot of international students interested. There used to be a huge program, Stephen, in the Philippines. It was a multinational place, but they've had so many issues there politically as well as funding, and so right now, Crowley and Stuttgart are the two places in the world for rice breeding.
What I was going to ask, if you could, I thought I heard you say that the contract's going to be coming in soon?
Yes.
Would you please get with Supervisor Damp as the head of legal affairs, just to let him put his eyes on it? I know Tom and all those folks will be looking at it, the actual legal work, but just so that Robert could put his eyes on it, so that if any board members have a question, we can kind of funnel all that.
We got plenty of time to do that. We'll make sure that happens. Thank you, sir.
That concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. There are no reports to the board at this time. The next item on the agenda are committee reports. I will entertain one motion to approve all the committee recommendations. Second. Because we had a little hiccup earlier, I need to read this precisely. I will entertain one motion to approve all committee recommendations, including a recommendation from the audit committee that I need to read into the record. The audit committee recommends for board approval a reaffirmation that the audit committee and president will jointly evaluate the chief auditor. There should be a clarification of roles of the audit committee, president, and chief auditor, and report such clarification to the audit committee on September 13, 2019. With that addition, is there a motion to adopt all committee recommendations? So moved.
Second.
Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion carries. Last thing on the agenda is the chairman's report. Only have a few things. One, I want to recognize the 60th anniversary of the Golden Girls Dance Line. I want to also congratulate Megan Cruz, an LSU Shreveport student who is the new Miss Louisiana. So the new Miss Louisiana is an LSU Tiger, not a Tiger, LSU pilot. But she is an LSU student. And also, although I had to miss the dinner last night, we had an incredible dinner with the UL system board last night, collaborated, I'm sure, on, I'll let Mary give us like 30 seconds on the dinner. I had to miss the dinner. My daughter was playing in a 13-year-old softball championship, and they won, thankfully. So, but Mary, please just give us 30 seconds on this.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had a wonderful dinner and exchange with the UL board last night after they had had a very long day, I think similar to ours today. We all enjoyed the chance to break bread together, talk about some issues that both systems are facing, and really just share our perspectives and realize the representation that we share across the state. I would be remiss if I did not take the time to thank Ms. Griffith for all the work she put in. I missed doing that last night, and I want to apologize to her because it was a lovely dinner. Everyone had a wonderful time. It was a great time for us to come together, discuss what had happened this summer in the legislative session and our joint goals moving forward.
Thank you. Glad that, as you know, when we started the year, our goal was to get together with our fellow stakeholders. We've had dinner now with the Southern Board, we've had dinner with the UL Board, and we are in the process of scheduling a gathering with the regions between now and September. So I think we will have covered everything very nicely. With that, the chairman's report is concluded. Our next regularly scheduled board meeting will be right here in Baton Rouge on September 13th. However, we anticipate that Mr. Starnes' committee may call a special meeting between now and then, and we will announce that in due course. If there's no other business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
No move.
Any objection? Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Timing, man.